Catherine Buckley was a young Irish girl, 22 years old, very typical of the Irish that were emigrating to the United States at that time. In most families in Ireland, they had anywhere from 8 to 10 children. They had a small farmstead they lived on, and there was no room for adults once they outgrew their childhood years, and they had to either marry locally or they had to emigrate. And probably 75–80% of the young Irish emigrated to the United States, South America, Australia, many of them to England to work, but they were lost to Ireland, and many of them never came back. And Kate was one of those that was on her trip to make her fortune or to find happiness in the United States. Now, she had an ulterior motive. She lived in a home where her father had lost his first wife, and she had one sister from that marriage named Margaret, who had already emigrated to the United States. Kate had one brother that was going to inherit the farm. And her life, once her education was over, she went to Cork City, and she worked there as a domestic in the home of one of the wealthy families there. And they thought very highly of her. While Kate was working in Cork City, she met and fell in love with George Richardson, who was a British Army man. He had been sent to Kowloon, Hong Kong, and he was serving out his term there. And they talked about getting married. They were very much in love, and he went off to China, and she wrote him a letter and said, "I am going to be leaving Ireland. My sister is paying my way to the United States, and I'm going to go to her right out in Roxbury, right outside Boston, and I will be waiting for you when your term is up." Well, of course, she didn't make it to the New World. She didn't make it to Boston. And she went down in the Titanic. She is the only Irish person whose body was found and brought to America and buried in America. And she was buried in St. Joseph's Cemetery in West Roxbury, Massachusetts. And our society worked long and hard to have a stone erected for her, because though she's buried there, there was no stone on her grave. And we contacted her family. We contacted local stone cutter. We worked extensively with the cemetery, and they all cooperated, and a stone was furnished for her free of charge. The cemetery prepared everything free of charge, and the Irish associations in the Boston area put their efforts thoroughly behind this project, and we had hundreds of people show up for this dedication, including an Irish honor guard that was there through the whole thing. Kate Buckley finally had recognition officially through a stone that was erected in her memory in St. Joseph's Cemetery, finally putting an end to this period when no one knew she existed. Now they do, and the family was so happy that this was being done. The family collected from all the way from Boston to Chicago to Washington, D.C. area. The whole family got together. It brought the entire family together for this service. And they were unbelievable in terms of providing materials that the sister had received over the years. That was how we learned about her love life, her fiance, and he communicated with her sister through letters. Kate's sister Margaret informed her fiance, George Richardson, in China, that Kate had passed away on the Titanic, that she had died drowned on the Titanic. And he and Margaret, then set up communication back and forth. And in one of the letters that Margaret sent to him, acknowledging what had happened to Kate and that she was gone, here is his response to Margaret's letter, part of it. Margaret, I'm very sorry to hear that she has gone to her eternal home and left me in this dark world of ours alone. I do not know what I shall do with myself now. My best friend has been taken from me, but I am very pleased to see that you got her body and soul aright, and that she has been put away in a proper way, as I did not like to think that my dear sweetheart Kitty was having a watery grave. Thank God he brought her to the dear people who were waiting to receive her. I am glad to tell you that she was the best friend I ever met. I get very emotional when I think about this, and anytime I read this letter and other letters written also, at the emotional attachment that these two people had and how tragically it was torn apart by life. And we have no guarantees in life, and they certainly didn't expect this was going to be the end. And it's very obvious from what George writes back to Margaret that it influenced his life tremendously, and a part of him died with her. And this has a tremendous effect on me when I read things like this, because I tend to be an emotional person myself. And this is what these stories, these Titanic stories, are all about. When you read things like this and realize the personal nature, the way people are living, their expectations in life, what they're looking forward to in life, and just torn away by the Titanic disaster. And in so many cases, this influenced people's lives in many different ways. I've studied Kate extensively, talked to family members, gotten all the information we could get from the family in Ireland, who were very cooperative also. And the thing that I am left with in terms of Kate and my memories of her, I have a problem when I read Titanic's stories, like the letter that we just responded to, and yet I try in my mind to figure out what this person looked like, how they lived their lives, and there was no picture of Kate Buckley. No one had a picture. And finally, after the service, the family in Ireland found a picture of her that is now visible and available. And when I looked at that, my feeling was, this is Kate Buckley. And you got a real feel for what she was like as a person. It's one thing when your closest memory or your closest relationship to these people is standing at their gravesite. But it's another thing when you actually see a picture of what these people really look like, and you can infer so much from those pictures. So I was left with a very positive image of a woman who was coming to this country full of expectations of a great life, meeting her future husband, getting married, having a family, and reaping the fortunes of the new world. And how tragic that it was torn away in the way that it was on the Titanic.